Scott woke up to the familiar, clammy discomfort beneath him. Even before he opened his eyes, he knew. His body felt damp, the sheets sticking uncomfortably to his skin. He groaned softly, shifting slightly, but it only made the sensation worse. A few seconds later, Margaret appeared in the doorway, fresh as ever, as if she had been expecting this. "Good morning, sunshine," she chirped, far too chipper for the situation. "Let's get you cleaned up." Scott sighed, resigned. Margaret moved swiftly, pressing a button on the special lift attached to his bed. The mechanical hum filled the room as he was gently hoisted into the air, floating for a moment before she guided him onto the changing table. This was their routine now. Fighting it had proven pointless. Margaret, as always, worked with practiced efficiency, peeling away his soaked diaper and replacing it with a fresh one. As she secured the final tab, she gave his knee a light pat. "We've got a big adventure ahead." Scott raised an eyebrow. "Oh, we're going to New Gotham City for a special convention," Margaret announced, smoothing out his pajama top. "It's for people with spinal cord injuries, lots of ex-athletes too. Plus, we get to stay in a fancy hotel." Scott wasn't sure if she expected excitement from him, but she got nothing more than a tired blink. Margaret wasn't deterred. "But first, breakfast." She wheeled him to the kitchen and placed a bowl of oatmeal in front of him. Without hesitation, she scooped up a spoonful and held it to his lips. He scowled but let her feed him, chewing as she casually patted his head. "Good boy," she said, and Scott's eye twitched. "Be patient. We've got a long day ahead." Margaret packed up their things, and soon they were en route to the train station. As they approached the gate, she handed a staff member a special disability pass. The worker gave Scott a quick once-over, nodded, and waved them through. The mobility man's scooter had to be stowed in the luggage compartment. Scott hated the thing at first, but now he felt strangely exposed without it. Once settled in their designated seats in the train's accessibility section, Margaret unwrapped their packed breakfast sandwiches. Scott eyed the food, knowing his hands wouldn't cooperate. Before he could say anything, Margaret took charge, cutting the sandwich into manageable pieces and feeding them to him. He chewed slowly, feeling equal parts grateful and humiliated. "So," he mumbled between bites, "why exactly are we doing this?" Margaret dabbed the corner of his mouth with a napkin. "Because it'll be good for you. And because I said so." Scott exhaled sharply, turning his attention to the window. The sun dipped lower, bathing the horizon in a burnt orange glow. He watched the passing landscape until his eyelids grew heavy, and soon he drifted into a dream. He was flying, soaring through the air, twisting, flipping, slicing through the water below like a knife. The crowd roared, his heart pounded with exhilaration. The impact was deafening. Everything shattered. The pain shot through him, white-hot and unforgiving. The pool, the cheers, the triumph. It all crumbled into darkness. Scott's eyes flew open, his breath coming in short gasps. His body felt damp, but not just from sweat. "Scott?" Margaret's voice was gentle, but he barely registered it. He had wet himself again. Tears burned the edges of his vision. It was too much. The dreams, the memories, the loss of everything he was supposed to be. Margaret was already lifting him slightly, whispering reassurances as she rubbed slow circles on his back. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured. "We'll get you changed before we get off." The train conductor announced their arrival at New Gotham City. Margaret wasted no time, changing Scott with practiced ease in the train's small restroom. As she secured the final tab, she smiled. "See? No big deal." Scott remained quiet as they wheeled off the train. Margaret headed straight for the luggage compartment, but when she returned, her face was grim. "Scott, it's gone. The mobility man's scooter isn't here." A pit formed in his stomach. What? For the next 2 hours, they checked every possible place. It wasn't until a half-panicked worker finally located it, stashed behind a row of luggage, that they got it back. By then, Scott was irritable, starving, and, to his horror, in desperate need of another change. Margaret flagged a taxi, ignoring the lingering stares from people passing by. He knew why they were looking. He smelled, He was covered in crumbs from a snack she had tried feeding him earlier, and he was in a wheelchair. Triple threat. By the time they reached the hotel, he was beyond done. Margaret, unfazed, wheeled him inside, checked them in, and took him straight to the room. The moment the door clicked shut, Scott broke. "I hate this," he snapped, voice shaking. "I hate everything about this." Margaret knelt beside him, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "I know, sweetheart. I know." He didn't mean to cry, but he did. Full on, hiccuping sobs that he couldn't stop. Margaret hummed softly, rocking him slightly as she stroked his back. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered. And maybe, just maybe, he believed her. The next morning, after another change and breakfast, they arrived at the convention. The day was filled with speeches, demonstrations, and adaptive sports. That night, they played wheelchair tug-of-war and raced through obstacle courses. Scott laughed more than he had in months. Then came the final event: wheelchair trust falls. One by one, participants rolled to the edge of a stage, leaned back, and let themselves fall into the waiting arms of the group below. Scott hesitated as his turn approached. "It's okay," Kenneth assured him. "You can trust us." Scott swallowed hard. Here goes nothing. He rolled backward. And then, chaos. A bird swooped through the room, a collective gasp rose, and in that instant of distraction, no one caught him. He hit the floor hard. Pain flared through him. But then, something else. A jolt. A spark. His foot twitched. Scott's breath caught. He flexed his fingers, his arms, his legs, and he could feel them. Without a word, he turned to Margaret. His hands shook, but he reached for the waistband of his diaper, unfastened it, and held it out to her. "I'm done." Margaret's mouth opened slightly, eyes flickering between him and the soaked diaper in his hands. She didn't argue. She didn't try to reassure him. She just nodded, as if somehow she had known this moment would come. Scott dropped the diaper into the nearest trash bin, squared his shoulders, and walked, truly walked, toward the exit. He hailed a taxi, climbed inside, and without looking back, disappeared into the night. For the first time in what felt like forever, Scott was in control. The end. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Mommy Sarah's Story Time. If you enjoyed the stories, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Remember, my channel is not monetized, and I write most of the content myself. On occasions when I don't, it's sourced through emails from trusted contacts. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you're able to, consider making a donation to support our channel. Your support means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you.